So, here I am, doing something I never thought I would, posting my personal disaster online, looking for advice. My name's Josh, 38 years old, and I've been married to Emma for almost 12 years now. We've had our ups and downs, like any couple, but lately, something felt off. I couldn't shake this gut feeling that Emma was hiding something from me. Call it paranoia, but I knew something wasn't right. It all started innocently enough. Emma, 35, is stunning, smart, and has this charm that draws people in. But for the past few months, she seemed distant. She started coming home late from work, said she had more business dinners and weekend work trips. And every time I asked, her answers were vague. Maybe it's because she works in advertising, and her clients always have crazy schedules, but I couldn't help but notice something felt off. But here's the thing. I didn't confront her directly. Instead, my insecurities took the wheel, and I did something I'm still not sure was a smart move. Instead of talking to her like a grown-up, I hired someone to test her loyalty. Yeah, I know, not the best move. His name was Luke, a 29-year-old, good-looking guy with a charming smile and a background in doing these kinds of, let's call them, loyalty tests. Luke was supposed to act as if he met Emma by accident. My plan was simple. See if Emma would take the bait. If she was faithful, I'd breathe easy. If not, I'd have the truth staring me in the face. Either way, I thought I was prepared. Spoiler alert, I was not. We set things in motion. Luke was supposed to casually bump into Emma at one of her regular coffee spots. He'd strike up a conversation, charm her, and see where it went. I gave him strict instructions. No pushing, no aggressive flirting. Just play it cool and see how Emma reacts. A week passed, and then Luke started feeding me updates. They'd run into each other a couple of times now. According to him, Emma was polite but distant at first. No red flags, no weird behavior. For a moment, I started thinking maybe I had overreacted. Maybe Emma was just busy with work, and I was letting my jealousy get the best of me. But then, everything changed. Luke told me that during one of their coffee meetups, Emma opened up more. They started texting. Just friendly stuff at first, small talk, work gripes, random things. Then the texts became more frequent. Luke said he noticed Emma starting to loosen up around him, and that's when my stomach dropped. I could feel the panic setting in, but I told myself it could all still be innocent, right? People text coworkers and acquaintances all the time. But when Luke sent me a screenshot of one of their texts, my heart sank. Can't wait to see you again, Luke, winky face, Emma had sent. That damn winky face. It felt like a punch to the gut. The night I saw that message from Emma, I could hardly sleep. My mind kept playing tricks on me. Was she really flirting with this guy? Was I overreacting? Maybe it was all innocent banter? But no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, that winky face burned in my memory. It was like the whole world had shifted, and suddenly I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. The next day, Luke told me they had plans to meet up again. This time, it wouldn't be just casual coffee. It was drinks after work. Something about that felt way more intimate, way more dangerous. It wasn't just a random chat at a cafe anymore. Drinks after hours were different. They carried a weight to them, an unspoken understanding that things might go further. I started to regret the whole thing. What was I thinking? But it was too late now. The wheels were already in motion, and I needed to see this through, no matter how sick it made me feel. Luke promised to keep me updated, and that night I waited by my phone like a man waiting for a bomb to go off. Around 11 p.m., I got the text, just left the bar. She's definitely into me, man. My heart raced. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I wanted to confront Emma right then and there, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. Not without more proof. I had to stay calm. Luke promised to keep pushing, to see how far she was willing to go. At this point, I hated myself for hiring him. What if Emma would have never crossed the line if I hadn't pushed her toward it? Was I creating the very thing I feared? A few days later, Luke sent me a voice message, one that made my blood run cold. In the recording, I heard them laughing. It was muffled, but it was definitely Emma. She sounded tipsy, playful. Then, I heard Luke's voice teasing her about how she looked at him when they first met. She giggled, saying, "Well, maybe I thought you were cute." There was a pause in the audio, and then Emma's voice dropped lower, more serious. "Your trouble, Luke." I don't know why I keep meeting up with you. I'm married. This is wrong. But Luke, ever the smooth talker, replied softly, sometimes the wrong things feel the best, don't they? I had to stop the message there. I couldn't bear to hear any more. It was happening. The line I hoped she wouldn't cross was right in front of her, and I was the one who put it there. A few days passed without any updates. I was a mess, trying to act normal around Emma, but every time she smiled at me or kissed me goodbye in the morning, I felt like I was being stabbed in the back. Did she feel guilty? Was she thinking about Luke when she was with me? Then, late one Friday night, Luke sent me a picture, a photo of him and Emma at a bar. They were sitting close, maybe too close, and I could see her hand resting on his arm, almost casually. But what struck me the most was the look on her face. She looked happy. Not guilty, not conflicted, just happy. I confronted Luke about it, demanding to know if they had slept together. He hesitated for a moment before responding, not yet, but it's only a matter of time. That's when I snapped. I told Luke to stop. This had gone far enough. I didn't need to see anything else. But Luke, ever the professional, told me that stopping now would leave things unresolved. He said I needed to know for sure, otherwise I'd be left with doubts for the rest of my life. And deep down, I knew he was right. A week later, the final straw came. Luke texted me late at night. She's invited me over. She thinks I'm coming for drinks, but we both know where this is going. My heart was pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream, to break something. I should have called it off right then, but I was too deep into this mess now. I told Luke to go, to see what happened, but I knew. I already knew. I didn't sleep that night. After Luke sent me the message that Emma had invited him over, my mind was racing. I knew what was going to happen. I could picture it too clearly, and it was tearing me apart. Why was I letting this continue? Why couldn't I just confront her and be done with it? I guess I needed to know if she would really do it, if she would really cross that final line. The next day, Luke didn't send any updates. No texts, no pictures. I thought maybe, just maybe, he didn't go through with it. Maybe Emma realized what she was doing and stopped before it got too far. But that hope didn't last long. The following night, I got a text from Luke. We need to talk. We met up at a quiet cafe. As soon as I saw his face, I knew the answer. Luke looked different. Smug. Confident. He didn't need to say anything, but I needed to hear it. I slept with her, Luke said, his tone casual, like it was just another part of his job. My stomach dropped. I felt like the world had stopped spinning. Emma had done it. She'd gone all the way. And the worst part? I was the one who made it happen. I'm sorry, man. But she didn't even hesitate. It was like she wanted it to happen. Those words stung worse than anything. She wanted it. She didn't just fall into it by accident. She made a choice, and that choice wasn't me. Over the next few days, things between Emma and I felt strained. She was distant, but there was also something else. She seemed relieved. Maybe she thought she had gotten away with it, that she could have her affair and keep our life intact without me ever knowing. But I knew, and knowing was killing me. Luke, on the other hand, kept pushing. He wanted to meet up with Emma again. He said she was hooked now, that there was no turning back. But I couldn't let that happen. I had to confront her before this situation spiraled any further out of control. One evening, I decided to talk to her. We were sitting at the dinner table, and I could barely look at her. How could she sit there, pretending everything was normal, when I knew what she had done? Emma, I said, my voice shaking slightly, we need to talk. She looked up at me, her face calm, but I could see a flicker of something in her eyes. Was it fear? Guilt? I couldn't tell. What's going on, Josh? She asked, setting down her fork. I know about Luke, I blurted out. I didn't want to drag this out any longer. Her face went pale. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she laughed, but it was a nervous, shaky laugh. Luke, what are you talking about? Don't lie to me, I snapped, standing up from the table. I know everything. I know about the drinks, the late-night texts, and I know that you slept with him. Emma's expression shifted. I could see the realization wash over her, that she'd been caught. But instead of crumbling, she just sat there, staring at me. Josh, I didn't want this to happen. Then why did it? I demanded, my voice rising. Why did you do it? Was I not enough for you? Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I thought she was going to apologize. But instead, she said, I don't know. I don't know why. It just happened. I didn't mean to hurt you. I stood there, shaking my head. How could she say that? She knew exactly what she was doing. She had chosen Luke over me, and now she was trying to downplay it. You ruined everything, I whispered. Was it worth it? Emma looked away, wiping her tears. I'm sorry, Josh. I didn't want things to end up like this. But it was too late. The damage was done. As I walked out of the room, I realized something. This wasn't just about Emma's betrayal. This was about me too. I had created this mess. I had set the trap, and she had fallen into it. But what did that say about me? The next day, I got another message from Luke. We need to meet. When we met up, Luke seemed different, colder. He wasn't the laid-back, smooth-talking guy I'd hired. Now, he seemed almost possessive. I'm going to keep seeing her, he said, his voice flat. She's mine now. I stared at him, not understanding what he meant. What are you talking about? Emma, she's not your wife anymore. She doesn't love you, Josh. She loves me. The words hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. Luke was trying to take her from me, to make her his. And the worst part? I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't lying. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Luke wasn't just some pawn I had hired to test Emma's loyalty anymore. He had gone rogue. He was looking me dead in the eye, telling me that my wife, the woman I had spent over a decade with, was now his. My heart was racing, but I wasn't going to let him see how much this was affecting me. I needed to stay calm, stay in control. But the truth was, I could feel control slipping through my fingers with every word he said. She's not yours, Luke, I said, my voice more steady than I felt inside. You were just part of the plan. This isn't real for her. He chuckled, shaking his head. That's where you're wrong, Josh. You think you're still in control here? You think she's going to come back to you after all this? You set this whole thing up, and now you're pissed because it's not going the way you planned. I stood there, speechless. Was he right? Had I set this in motion only to lose everything? You never understood her, Luke continued, his tone smug. She's been craving excitement, something more than what you could give her. She's been waiting for someone like me. I felt a surge of anger boiling inside me. Stay away from my wife, I warned, my voice low. He smiled, leaning back casually. Or what? I had no answer to that. What was I going to do? Everything was falling apart. I turned and walked away, not wanting to give him the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. But as I left, I could feel his eyes on me, that smug grin still plastered on his face. Luke wasn't going to let this go. I knew that now. He was obsessed with Emma, and he wasn't going to stop until he had her completely. Over the next few days, things got worse. Emma tried to act normal, but I could see the guilt eating away at her. She knew she had messed up, but she didn't know how to fix it. And every time I tried to talk to her, she shut down. Then, one night, I got a message from Luke. I'm with her right now. She wants me, not you. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my coat and stormed out of the house, driving aimlessly through the streets, trying to figure out what to do. This was getting out of control. I needed to end it, but I didn't know how. When I finally got home, Emma was sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. Josh, we need to talk. I sat down, my heart pounding in my chest. What is it? I can't do this anymore, she said, her voice trembling. I can't keep lying to you. My stomach dropped. This was it. She was going to tell me that she was leaving me for him. I don't love him, she said, her voice breaking. I don't know why I did it, but I don't love him. I love you, Josh. Her words caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Then why did you do it? I asked, my voice shaking. Why did you choose him over me? She shook her head, wiping away her tears. I didn't choose him. I just felt lost. I didn't know how to talk to you. I didn't know how to fix us. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. We both froze. It was late, too late for visitors. My heart raced as I walked to the door and opened it. It was Luke. He stood there, smiling, that same smug expression on his face. I told you she was mine. I clenched my fists, barely able to contain my rage. Get out of here. But Luke didn't move. He looked past me, straight at Emma. Tell him, Emma. Tell him who you really want. Emma stood up, shaking her head. Luke, stop. But he didn't stop. He stepped inside, his eyes locked on her. Tell him, Emma. Tell him the truth. I grabbed Luke by the collar, shoving him back towards the door. Get out. But as I pushed him out, I could see it in Emma's eyes, the hesitation, the doubt. That's when it hit me. Luke wasn't just some random guy. He wasn't just someone I had hired to test Emma's loyalty. He had been planning this from the start. He had manipulated everything, turning my marriage into his own twisted game. Josh, wait, Emma said, stepping towards me. I need to explain. I stopped, but didn't turn around. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, my breath heavy. Explain what, Emma? I said, my voice low but vibrating with anger. That you've been sleeping with Luke? That you've been lying to me for weeks? Her words faltered. It wasn't like that. Josh, Luke said, his voice calm, almost mocking. Let's talk about this. Talk? I took a step closer to him, feeling my blood boil. You come into my house, screw my wife, and now you want to talk? Emma stood frozen between us, her eyes darting back and forth, filled with fear and guilt. But Luke, he was different. His face was unreadable, calm, almost amused. He didn't flinch. It was like he had already won, and that's when I realized something. He wasn't here to apologize. He was here to finish what he started. Luke smirked, taking another step forward, closing the gap between us. You know, he said, his voice as smooth as silk, if you hadn't been so distant, this wouldn't have happened. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I lunged at him, grabbing the front of his shirt and slamming him against the wall. You think this is my fault? I growled, my face inches from his. You think you can just walk in here and take everything from me? But Luke didn't fight back. He just smiled, that same cold, twisted smile, like he was enjoying this. Josh, he whispered, his voice laced with venom. She wanted this. She came to me. I froze. His words echoed in my head, blurring the line between truth and lies. Emma was crying now, begging me to stop, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Luke leaned in closer, his lips almost touching my ear. She was never yours, Josh, he whispered. She was mine the moment I walked through that door. Something inside me snapped. Before I knew what I was doing, I had pulled back my fist and swung. The impact was hard, satisfying. Luke's head snapped to the side, blood trickling from his lip, but he didn't stop smiling. He looked at me, his eyes cold and dark. Feel better, he spat, wiping the blood from his lip. Josh, stop. Emma's voice cut through the haze of rage, but it only fueled the fire inside me. I turned to her, my chest heaving. Why, Emma? I demanded. Why him? Why do this to us? Her lips trembled, tears streaming down her face, but she couldn't answer. Maybe she didn't have an answer. Maybe the truth was something neither of us could face. But Luke was different. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't ashamed. He was in control, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about the affair. This was about power. He wanted to take everything from me. My wife, my life, my sanity. Josh, Luke said, straightening up, that twisted smile never leaving his face. You can hit me all you want, but it won't change anything. She's already gone. I wanted to tear him apart, to destroy him, but something stopped me. His words. They were true. She was already gone. Whether it was Luke or someone else, Emma had made her choice, and it wasn't me. For the first time that night, I felt something other than anger. I felt empty. I let go of Luke, my hands trembling as I backed away. Emma rushed to me, but I held up a hand to stop her. Don't, I said, my voice hollow. Just don't. She froze, her eyes wide with guilt and fear, but I couldn't look at her. I couldn't look at either of them. I walked out the front door, leaving them both behind, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. The night air was cold against my skin, but I didn't feel it. All I could feel was the numbness spreading through my chest, the realization that everything I had known was over. I didn't make it far down the street before I heard her voice, soft and shaky, calling after me. Josh, please. I need to tell you something. I stopped but didn't turn around. I didn't want to face her, not after everything. But I couldn't move either. Something about her tone, an edge of desperation I hadn't heard before, rooted me to the spot. Josh, she called again, her footsteps closing the distance between us. I slowly turned to see her standing just a few feet away, her face pale, tears still streaking down her cheeks. She looked broken. I had seen her cry before, but this was different. There was something raw, vulnerable in her eyes. Something more than just guilt. What do you want, Emma? My voice was cold, distant, even though I felt anything but. My chest was tight with emotion, anger still simmering just beneath the surface, but for the first time tonight, it wasn't directed at Luke. It was all for her. She took a shaky breath, hugging her arms around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. Josh, she faltered, looking down at the ground. It wasn't just him. My heart stopped. What do you mean? She looked up at me then, her eyes wide with fear, but also something else. Something darker. There were others. The air around us seemed to freeze. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me, and I was falling into some bottomless pit. I didn't mean for it to happen, she stammered, her voice trembling as she spoke. It started a while ago, before Luke. My mind reeled, trying to process her words. Before Luke. The betrayal I thought I was just beginning to understand suddenly became so much bigger, so much deeper than I ever imagined. Who? I demanded, my voice tight, barely more than a whisper. Who else, Emma? She hesitated, biting her lip, looking around as if she was searching for an escape. Just a few people, she finally admitted, barely able to meet my eyes. A couple of people from work, and someone I met online. But they never meant anything, Josh, I swear. I didn't know how to stop. My head was spinning. The anger I'd felt earlier had been like a roaring fire. But this was like ice. It spread through my veins, freezing me from the inside out. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to respond to the reality that my wife, my Emma, had been lying to me for God knows how long. Why? Was all I could manage to ask. It came out choked, like a plea. Why, Emma? She closed her eyes for a moment, like she couldn't bear to look at me. I don't know, she whispered, her voice cracking. I just felt lost. It wasn't about you, Josh. It wasn't even about them. It was just, I needed something. I needed to feel alive again. And then once it started, I couldn't stop. I shook my head, trying to wrap my mind around her words. Needed to feel alive? What the hell did that even mean? So it wasn't enough? I asked, my voice bitter, laced with sarcasm. Our life, our marriage, me? I wasn't enough for you. Josh, no. It wasn't like that. She reached for me, but I stepped back, unable to let her touch me. I love you, I do. I never stopped loving you. Love? I barked out a laugh, cold and sharp. You have a funny way of showing it, Emma. Her face crumpled, more tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I know I hurt you, but I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted to lose you. The words hung between us, heavy and hollow. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this was all just some terrible mistake, that somehow we could fix it. But how could I believe anything she said after this? After finding out how many lies she had already told? For the first time in what felt like hours, the weight of it all started to press down on me, suffocating me. My legs felt weak, my chest tight, and I couldn't stand to be near her anymore. I can't do this, I muttered, shaking my head as I turned away from her again. I can't even look at you right now. Josh, please, she cried, her voice desperate. I know I messed up, but I don't want to lose you. Please, just give me a chance to make it right. But I was already walking away, leaving her standing in the dark, alone. I couldn't listen to her anymore. I couldn't take another word. I spent the night driving aimlessly, trying to clear my head, but the thought of Emma's words echoed in my mind over and over again. There were others. That confession, cold and blunt, kept cutting deeper with every mile. As much as I tried to push it away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about her needing to feel alive. No, there was more. Something she wasn't telling me. And worse, something Luke wasn't telling me either. By the time I made it home, it was already close to midnight. The house was dark. Emma must have gone to bed, or at least that's what I thought. But when I stepped inside, I noticed a faint light coming from the kitchen. My gut twisted, and a strange sense of dread crept up my spine. Quietly, I walked toward the kitchen, and that's when I saw him. Luke. He was standing in the middle of the room, his back to me, talking in a low voice to someone on his phone. "Yeah, I'm still here. Don't worry, I'll take care of it," I heard him say, his tone disturbingly calm. My mind raced. Why the hell is Luke here? And what the hell was he planning to take care of? "Luke." My voice came out sharp, startling him as he spun around to face me. His expression shifted from surprise to something more menacing, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Josh," he said, pocketing his phone with a slow, deliberate motion. "I didn't expect you back so soon. Why are you in my house?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady even though my heart was racing. "I came to talk to Emma," he said casually, as if his presence here was the most natural thing in the world. "I thought we could all have a chat. You know, clear the air." But something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. There was an underlying tension in his voice, a hint of something darker lurking beneath the surface. "Where is Emma?" I asked, my voice lowering as I took a step closer to him. Luke smiled, a cold, unsettling smile that didn't reach his eyes. "She's upstairs, but you don't need to worry about her right now. This is between us." Before I could even process what was happening, Luke moved toward me, his posture shifting from relaxed to threatening. I instinctively stepped back, my heart pounding in my chest as his intentions became terrifyingly clear. "Luke, what the hell are you doing?" I asked, my voice rising with panic. "You don't get it, do you, Josh?" he said, his voice dripping with anger. "She was never yours. You don't deserve her. You're just in the way." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about an affair. This was about obsession. Luke didn't just want Emma. He wanted to destroy me. "I don't care what's going on between you two," I said, trying to keep my distance, but Luke was already closing in. "This is insane. You need to leave." But he didn't leave. Instead, his eyes grew darker, and the tension in the air became suffocating. "I've been patient," he growled, stepping closer until we were face to face. "But I'm done waiting." Without warning, Luke lunged at me, shoving me back against the wall with surprising force. I stumbled, barely managing to keep my balance as my shoulders slammed into the corner of the kitchen counter. The pain shot through my body, but it was nothing compared to the fear that was now coursing through my veins. Luke's face twisted into something almost unrecognizable, his calm facade completely shattered. I tried to push him away, but he was stronger than I expected, his grip tightening around my shirt as he forced me back, trapping me against the wall. "You don't deserve her," he hissed, his face inches from mine, his breath hot against my skin. "I'm the one who's been there for her. I'm the one she really wants." "Luke, stop," I gasped, struggling against his hold. But it was no use. His obsession had completely taken over. "I should have been the one she married," he spat, his voice rising with fury. "Not you. You don't even know how to love her. You don't know anything about her." With a sudden surge of adrenaline, I shoved him back with all the strength I could muster, breaking free from his grip. Luke stumbled, momentarily thrown off balance, but it wasn't enough to stop him. His eyes blazed with rage as he lunged at me again, this time knocking me to the ground. We crashed to the floor, and I felt the air leave my lungs as I hit the cold tile. Luke was on top of me now, his hands around my throat, squeezing tighter and tighter. I could barely breathe, my vision starting to blur as panic set in. But just as everything started to go dark, I heard a voice, Emma's voice, screaming from the top of the stairs. "Luke, stop. Please. Her voice pierced through the chaos, and for a split second, Luke's grip loosened. It was just enough for me to suck in a desperate breath, my lungs burning as I tried to regain control. Emma rushed down the stairs, her face pale with terror as she grabbed Luke's arm, trying to pull him off me. "This isn't what I wanted," she cried. "Luke, stop." But Luke wasn't listening. His gaze was locked on mine, his face twisted with fury. "I'm not going to let you take her from me, Josh," he snarled, his voice barely above a whisper. Luke's grip around my throat tightened as Emma screamed, pulling at his arm in a desperate attempt to stop him. The room seemed to spin as I gasped for air, my vision darkening around the edges. I could feel my strength slipping away, my body growing weaker with each passing second. Just when I thought it was all over, I managed to raise my knee, striking Luke hard in the stomach. He let out a grunt, his grip loosening just enough for me to throw him off me. I rolled to the side, coughing and choking, my throat burning as I struggled to fill my lungs with air. Luke staggered backward, his eyes wild with fury. His chest heaved as he caught his breath, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. Two men caught in a twisted web of betrayal and obsession. "You think this is over?" Luke spat, his voice hoarse. "I'm not leaving here without her." His words sent a chill down my spine. I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't going to stop until one of us was dead. I scrambled to my feet, my body aching from the fight. Blood trickled down from a cut on my forehead, but I barely felt it. All I could think about was surviving, protecting myself, and more importantly, protecting Emma. Emma stood frozen near the stairs, her face pale with shock, her eyes wide with terror. "Luke, stop this," she cried. "This isn't what I wanted." But Luke wasn't listening. He lunged at me again, and we collided with a force that sent us both crashing into the kitchen counter. Pain shot through my side as I hit the edge of the counter, but I didn't have time to think about it. Luke was on top of me, his hands clawing at my face, trying to overpower me. In the struggle, my hand found a kitchen knife on the counter. I grabbed it instinctively, holding it up to block his next attack. But in the chaos, in the flurry of movement and desperation, the blade twisted, plunging deep into Luke's side. For a moment, everything stopped. Luke froze, his eyes widening in shock as he looked down at the knife buried in his body. Blood seeped through his shirt, spreading across the fabric like a dark, ominous stain. He stumbled backward, his hand reaching for the wound, his face pale and confused. "No," he whispered, as if he couldn't believe what had just happened. I stood there, frozen, the knife still in my hand, my mind reeling from what I had just done. Emma gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as she watched in horror. Luke took a few shaky steps, his body swaying, before he collapsed to the floor with a sickening thud. Blood pooled around him, the life draining from his eyes as he struggled to breathe. "Look," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. She rushed to his side, kneeling beside him, her hands trembling as she tried to stop the bleeding. But it was too late. His body went still, his chest rising and falling one last time before it stopped completely. For a long moment, the room was silent. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall, counting the seconds that stretched into eternity. My heart pounded in my chest, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on me like a crushing force. Emma turned to look at me, her face streaked with tears, her eyes filled with a mixture of shock and sorrow. "Josh, what have we done?" she whispered. I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight, my mind numb. I had killed him. I hadn't meant to God. I hadn't meant for any of this to happen. But now Luke was dead, and nothing would ever be the same. "I hired him," I blurted out suddenly, the words spilling out before I could stop them. Emma's eyes widened in confusion, her tears momentarily forgotten. What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I hired him," I repeated, my voice breaking. "I hired Luke to seduce you. I didn't trust you, Emma. I thought you were cheating on me. So I paid him to test you, to see if you would betray me." Emma stared at me in disbelief, the weight of my confession sinking in. You what?" "I'm so sorry," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I was so paranoid, so convinced that you didn't love me anymore, that I did the unthinkable. And now he's dead because of me." Emma shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks again. "Why, Josh? Why didn't you just talk to me? Why didn't you trust me?" "I don't know," I said, my voice cracking. "I don't know what came over me. I've been so scared of losing you, so terrified that you would leave me, and now I've lost everything." Emma stared at me for what felt like an eternity, her face a mixture of hurt, anger, and sadness. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but firm. "Josh, I never wanted anyone else. I've made mistakes and I've been distant, but I've always loved you. You didn't need to test me." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been so blinded by my own fears and insecurities that I had pushed her away, and in the end, I had caused the very thing I had been trying to prevent. We stood there in silence, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on us. Luke's body lay between us, a stark reminder of the choices we had made and the consequences we now had to face. "I'm so sorry," I whispered again, my voice barely audible. "I never meant for this to happen." Emma looked at me, her eyes filled with a sorrow I had never seen before. "We need to call the police," she said quietly. We can't just leave him like this." I nodded, my heart heavy with regret. As Emma reached for her phone to call the authorities, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had both lost something far more valuable than our marriage in that moment. We had lost trust, we had lost ourselves, and now we had lost him. As the distant sound of sirens grew closer, I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. Our lives, once so full of love and promise, had been shattered by doubt, fear, and obsession. And now, all that was left was the wreckage of the choices we had made. What do you think about this story? Write in comments. If you don't follow our channel Cheating Room, you will probably never hear from us again. If you are subscribed, congratulations, you will not miss any exciting story. Thank you for listening to this shocking story with us. See you again.